Hello, comrades, and welcome back to another episode of Ushanka Show, stories about life in the Soviet Union. I'm your host, Sergei Sputnikov, aka John Wayne Cheeseburger, aka CJ, but you can call me anytime. In today's video, we're going to talk about traveling within USSR, so inside the borders. Based on your comments, I realized quite a few people are confused when it comes to this topic and what kind of restrictions Soviet people had while they traveled inside of the Soviet Union. And I already covered the topic how hard it was to travel outside the USSR, and if you missed that video, I'll post the link below in the comment section. Some of you may be surprised, but there was hardly any restrictions for people to travel within the Soviet Union. For example, if I wanted to travel to Moscow, Leningrad, or anywhere else in the Soviet Union, I didn't need to get any special papers or permissions. I just go to the railroad station, buy a train ticket, and I go. And in my playlist called Soviet Public Transportation, I already covered the topics of traveling by train, traveling by plane, so you're welcome to check it out. Link also will be below in the comment section. Back in the Soviet days, my longest journey was from Kiev, capital of Soviet Ukraine, to Baku, capital of Soviet Azerbaijan, which occurred in the winter of 1989. My mother purchased putyovka through her labor union at her place of work, so that's like a travel voucher, and I went with another group of children of my age, so children of my mother's co-workers, and it was like a 48 hours or so train ride, so we spent 2 nights on a train. And we didn't need any special papers, any permissions, we just purchased train tickets, hopped on the train, and 2 days later we arrived to Baku. Similarly, over the years, my family traveled once to the Black Sea, one to Azov Sea. I went to Leningrad in the summer of 1986 when Chernobyl power plant exploded, and none of these times I needed any special permission. So no limitations, no restrictions for traveling within the USSR except if you wanted to visit so-called Zakrytый город, closed city. Even in modern Russia, if you look at this map, there are about 40 so-called closed cities and closed territories. Зато закрытое административно-территориальное образование. That's the places that you're not allowed to enter unless you have a special permit. And of course, during the Soviet days, there were way more closed cities. For example, like city of Sevastopol was a closed city because it was a large Navy base for the Soviet fleet. Another example of a large closed city was the city of Vladivostok. That's another large Navy base on the Pacific Ocean. Fun fact, Gerald Ford was the very first foreigner that officially visited Vladivostok back in November of 1974 when he had a summit with Leonid Brezhnev. Another interesting example of closed city was Balaklava, also located in Crimean Peninsula. Balaklava housed the underground submarine base. Normally, you wouldn't be able to locate closed cities on your regular maps, and quite often those cities carried numbers. So there would be, for example, Krasnoyarsk 26, which is a town located near Krasnoyarsk. So Krasnoyarsk was open city, but Krasnoyarsk 26, another name was Zheleznogorsk, that was a closed town, and it was closed because it had a factory that produced military-grade plutonium. In order to visit such closed cities or towns, a person needed a valid reason to do so. For example, if you needed to visit your relatives, or maybe you got a job there, you need to move there, you had to receive a special permission. So here you're looking at such permission called propusk. So the pass was issued to citizen Evgeny Vasilievich, born in 1927, and he received the permission and the right to live temporarily in Vladivostok. And this permission was issued in May 17, 1988 for about just 1 month until June 1988. And it says the purpose of visit, temporarily stay. And of course, such a permit a person needed to get in advance. So in this case, permit was issued in Omsk, Siberia. So you get the paper before you travel to Vladivostok. And then when you arrive to Vladivostok, for example, by the train, there'll be a checkpoint right there in the train station, and you need to show your propusk your permit to enter the city. And the back of that permit has the rules how to use this propusк. So it gives you the right only to enter the specific town that named in the permit. When you arrive to the city, you have 24 hours to give this permit as well as your passport to the person who is in charge of that building or dormitories or hotel or anything else to receive a temporary propiska. And I also have a video about propiska. I'll post the link below in the comment section. So this is the case when it's strongly advised to travel with your passport. So in Soviet Union we had passport for use inside of the country, inner passport, and there was another passport for traveling abroad. And number 5 states that if you break any rules while entering the zone near the border, then you can be punished according to the law. And you're supposed to sign it that you read the rules. Here's another example of propusк, the permit. This is one dated from June 1957, and a person was traveling to Sevastopol. As I mentioned, that was a large Soviet Navy base. And this permit is dated May of 1991, so right at the end of the Soviet Union. And this permission to visit Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky and Magadan for 3 months. And I remember the name Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky because every day on the radio at 3 p.m., which will always say 1500, they would name different time zones in the Soviet Union. They say Moscow is 1500, if Petropavlovsk-Kamchatskam polnoch. So there's a midnight at Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky. So when it was 3 p.m. in Moscow, it was midnight already in Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky. So that was the furthest east city in the Soviet Union, Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky. And here's the old-style propusк dated from December of 1945, and this was a permission to travel from Kharkov, Soviet Ukraine, to Tallinn. This is Estonian Soviet Social Republic, and this is for permanent stay, so it's so-called PMZ, so that's another popular Soviet abbreviation, Постоянное место жительства, so it's like a constant place of stay, PMZ. So some person was moving from Kharkov to Tallinn to live there. Kiev, the place that I spent most of my days, was in closed city, so if any relatives of ours or friends came to visit, they didn't require any permission, and similarly, as I said, anytime I traveled, we didn't need any papers either. Here's the fun Soviet fact for you. There were actually quite a few benefits of living in such closed cities because they were closed, so no outsiders had access to your grocery stores or in other stores. And usually the Soviet government tried to provide, have a good supply of foodstuffs and other items for the workers in the closed cities because, they work for the military or some scientific projects. So those stores were provided well, and they had limited access. And usually people who lived and worked in the closed cities also received a 20% bonus to their regular pay because it was quite inconvenient for them to live, because pretty much you live like in a low security prison. Anytime you have to leave, you had to get a permission. And then anytime anyone needs to visit you, you also had to go through the hassle to confirm, yes, it's my relative or it's my friend. So they were getting extra pay. 20%, it's a good pay bump. One of the most ill-famous closed cities was Chelyabinsk 40, another name Ozersk, population around 80,000 people. And back in September of 1957, at the local Mayak nuclear processing plant, they had quite an explosion and huge contamination event. Was pretty much to the level of Chernobyl almost, but it was kept hush-hush. So that happened in Chelyabinsk 40 back in 1957. So going back to the topic of this video, traveling in the Soviet Union, there was no limitations except the cases when you need to visit so-called closed cities. So my parents even didn't bother to bring our passports if we go, for example, to stay in a village for a month. Although, since most people didn't have a car and driver's license in the Soviet Union was used only as a driver's license, wasn't considered as a document. So if you go anywhere else, you probably should bring your passport. Well, my friends, it's all I have for today. Thank you for watching Ushanka Show, and thank you everyone who supports my work with YouTube subscriptions and with Patreon. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon. До свидания. Goodbye.